So we are here in San Francisco, and we have with us Nuritzi from Gnome Foundation, and we are here at the Red Hat Summit also. I am here to attend it. So I figured that you are here, so like, let's just meet up and and do this interview. So thanks for coming over, and so we have a lot to talk today, right? What is the job of president of Gnome Foundation? It's an open source community. What does the president do?
Sure.
Can we vote for you in the next
hope
elections?
So. Yes, exactly. So the reason why I joined the GNOME community is because I'm really interested in this notion of making technology that is for the whole world. And as part of that, I went to a few different BOFs at a conference that we had.
What is BOFs?
Excuse me. It's birds of a feather. Mm-hmm. Acronyms are not friendly. Sorry.
I just wanted to make it easy. I know,
birds of a feather. Mm-hmm. Yes, and they're essentially like hackfests for those people who don't know about them. And we had an internationalization one for GNOME. And some of the tools that we use are not very friendly for people who are non-developers. Mm-hmm. You have to be familiar with PO files and just in general kind of a development workflow. And yet there's a lot of opportunity for translators who, are just teachers or regular people. Mm. And that, the first moment kind of sparked questions in me, like, how do decisions get made in free and open source software communities where it's not, somebody dictating what the technology should be? How do these decisions get made? How are we using our budget to resource areas where we want to grow? How are we attracting newcomers and retaining them? How does the structure of the foundation really support the GNOME project? And so by asking myself those questions, I ended up joining the engagement team for one, mm-hmm. which is, kind of focused on that. And also from there, being elected to the board to be able to create policies to help with. First of all, I love the strategy about it. It's sort of, where do we see the GNOME community really going? How do we, create goals in a way that really respects the community and it's not just the board dictating it? The board has control of the funds. And so with the funds, you sort of dictate where the community can grow in many aspects. And so I see it as a way to really empower the community to, keep expanding and to enjoy being part of GNOME. This year we're investing more money into the marketing and engagement side of things to be able to make it possible for people who go to Hackfest to be able to go out and, have a couple of beers and pizza with the local community and, people who weren't part of the Hackfest to have these social ties with them. And, reimbursing for something like that may not seem like a big deal, mm-hmm. but if you do this in some emerging countries where $50 is actually a lot of money, mm-hmm. It makes a difference. And so it's kind of thinking through the lens of, how can we use this money again to really reach people who haven't had access, who may be new to free and open source software, et cetera. And when I first joined GNOME, I remember one of the questions that the community had mm-hmm. was, how are you, the board, going to help expand GNOME? Because web technologies and mobile applications are the sexy new things. Everybody wants to go do that. So how is a desktop technology going to attract newcomers? And so that's something that we've been really focusing on in the last couple of years. There's some great people doing a lot with the different technologies to make it easier to find projects, to contribute, but also, again, to structure our policies on a board level to really help make it easier for more people to join and participate.
Right. So Gnome Foundation is as much about software as much as it's about people, right?
Yes.
Because whatever you're telling, I didn't see software part at all. I just hear about culture and people. And I think, people need to understand in open source world, or even actually outside, as I said, I go to a lot of open source events, and the core message is it's all about people. They invest much more resources towards people than the code itself. So that's what I'm seeing here. So how does Gnome Foundation help, the actual development of the code, or, developers or?
We do things like sponsor hackfests and hold events where people can gather and actually work, plan sprints, all of that. And we provide the communication tools, we have the infrastructure, everything that, for example, right now we recently shifted to using GitLab. And so we host that. We, control essentially all of the different infrastructure needed to support the development of the technologies.
Okay, yeah, because it's Gnome project is volunteer driven. You don't have any staff to actually,
We have two.
yeah. But are they developers or?
No,
yeah, exactly.
Developers.
Because then it also won't be fair to pay some developer, not some. So you basically offer the infrastructure and then some legal protection also.
Yes, legal and. The other thing that we do is we have internships, and those are paid internships. Every now and then we have contracts for specific things that need to get done as well. But I would say, primarily it's sort of like the infrastructure that we can provide.
So the developer can just focus on what they want to do instead of worrying about these things. Okay. Gnome has, when I started using Linux, I used Gnome, and then I was using with Ubuntu. I started using Debian when I moved to Ubuntu, but I think in 2011 Unity happened, and that kind of broke the whole workflow that I had, because there are a lot of things that I learned in GNOME, and there are a lot of things that I like in Ubuntu, but it just, so I started hunting around, and I found OpenSUSE with KDE, and so I've been using a Plasma user. But recently, like last year, Canonical went back to GNOME. I talked to Mark Shuttleworth also, and he's also kind of happy that the community is taking over. So from Gnome's perspective, what happened was that you lost all those millions of Ubuntu users who were also GNOME users because they moved to Unity. So, but now it's going back. So can you talk about what kind of impact there was on GNOME? Did it hurt you guys? And how this current situation is going to change it?
Yeah, no, we're really excited about the new users. We think that it's a great change. We've we're doing our best to welcome the Ubuntu users back, and also the community behind that. Guadec was a great example. Like that, it was when, we had just started to do more with Canonical. They became part of our advisory board, and we started to see some of, Canonical members work with our design team, just start integrating more. And we've been really pleased with the integration efforts that they've done. As I mentioned, we're always excited to get more users, more interest. There's a lot of momentum building up for GNOME this year. We've had some new advisory board members. System 76 is one of the more recent ones. And, I think that it's partly in that GNOME's now like the most widely used desktop, and we've been doing a lot to attract and retain newcomers, and we're focusing on making it an amazing community to be a part of. So I see a lot of great things for it in 2018 and 2019. We have some hopefully exciting things coming up, and especially now that we have an executive director, which we had been missing for a while, I think that there's a lot of great changes in store for GNOME.
So what is the difference between the role of executive director and president?
Sure. So president is actually sort of a legacy term from when from back in the day, Miguel de Casa was the president. I don't know if we had an executive director at that time. Maybe we did. Anyway, the president of the board of directors essentially helps direct them to make sure that everything is done and kind of like keeps them on point. The board role is really that of being the helping with strategy for the GNOME community. We're elected, unlike the executive director, which was appointed by the board. And so we have the power to, hire or fire the executive director. And then that executive director is able to build a team as well. We have a director of operations, which he oversees, and, in the future we might see more positions.
So are these paid positions or just?
Yes, they are paid.
President and executive?
Oh, sorry. No, that's the difference. I am not paid by the Gnome Foundation.
So I'm like, you're getting double paid for
No. No, unfortunately. But I get travel perks, which is nice.
So you can become executive director also, right? Neil won't be happy, right? To hear this. We're not talking behind your back. No, nothing. You're safe. Don't worry.
Yes.
Anything else you would like to? I mean, GNOME is like a huge, massive project, but I think we talked about some of the core things. I mean, projects are not just about technology; it's also about people. So, anything else you think about GNOME, or we covered?
The one thing that I do want to say is that, this year, again, I talked about momentum, but we've really been seeing people from new communities start to be really active. GNOME Turkey is one of them. We have GNOME Kenya now, which is amazing. And I'd love to do some more, fostering of communities in Latin America. I think we used to be really strong in a lot of these areas, and then there was a time when some of these communities kind of died down, and so we're seeing some revival, and that's really exciting. My hope would be that they're not just communities that are promoting GNOME, but that are actively contributing to the core development, because as you said earlier, we really need that diversity in order to create products for our global population. And that's one of the challenges that we're working on right now, which is, when people may not feel comfortable speaking in a certain language, or let's say a certain tool is blocked by their country, or, a whole bunch of different issues that arise from different regions and cultures and languages. Those are some of the things that we're really thinking about now in order to facilitate the core development of GNOME. And then also, when I sort of mentioned about how are decisions even made, we're working on making that more visible so that people are able to get involved in the areas that they want to get involved when it's time to, come up with the features or whatever it is that they're working on.
So what kind of decision are you talking about? Because everything else, the technical decisions are made on the mailing list, right? Or publicly or not? Some are not.
So now we're using GitLab for a lot of this, yes, which is fantastic. Before it was, kind of different workflows for different things. So, and Hackfests are oftentimes a lot of the places where these things, decisions get made. And so again, that's why it's so important to encourage participation of, in Hackfest more publicly and with more access.
And the decisions of the board, are they also public or they're secret,
No, we have a mailing list. You can sign up, and we also moved the board to be using GitLab. So there are some issues that are private, trademark, or other things that are sensitive.
You do need the comfort of talking frankly in a private setup where you can
exactly, especially when you're dealing with legal and other sensitive issues.
Because otherwise, what happens? The problem with the Linux kernel is that it's totally public, so Linus cannot even express his frustration because everything is in public. You're living in a fish bowl. So it's a public. Sometimes private conversations do give the kind of I don't know what.
Like the needed privacy.
Safe environment, where you can just say whatever you want to say, So, anything else? I think we covered a lot of topics.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's time to go for dinner now, right?
Yes.
Dinner
and maybe a drink.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking time out today and talking to me today. And
Thank you.
Thanks. And hopefully we'll see you again in some future open source event.
Yes.
Thank you once again.
Thank you very much.